Hawkwind are an English rock band, one of the earliest space rock groups. Their lyrics favor urban and science fiction themes. They are considered a key link between the hippie and punk cultures. Hawkwind are primarily known for playing space rock, a hybrid of hard rock and acid rock that united the sonic power of the former and the free improvisation of the latter. Formed in November 1969, Hawkwind have gone through many incarnations and styles of music. Dozens of musicians, dancers and writers have worked with the group since their inception. History: 1969, formation. Dave Brock and Mick Slattery had been in the London-based psychedelic band Famous Cure, and a meeting with bassist John Harrison revealed a mutual interest in electronic music which led the trio to embark upon a new musical venture together. 17-year-old drummer Terry Ollis replied to an advert in a Music Weekly, while Nick Turner and Michael Dick Davis, old acquaintances of Brock, offered help with transport and gear, but were soon pulled into the band. Gate-crashing a local talent night at the All Saints Hall, Notting Hill, they were so untogether as to not even have a name, plumping for Group X at the last minute, nor any songs, choosing to play an extended 20-minute jam on the Byrds 8 Miles High. BBC Radio 1 DJ John Peel was in the audience and was impressed enough to tell event organizer, Douglas Smith, to keep an eye on them. Smith signed them up and got them a deal with Liberty Records on the back of a deal he was setting up for Cochise. The band settled on the name Hawkwind after briefly being billed as Hawkwind Zoo, Hawkwind being the nickname of Turner derived from his unappealing habit of clearing his throat and excessive flatulence. Another version of the origin of their name says they took it from one of Michael Moorcock's stories. Moorcock himself denies this story, however, and points out that there is no story of that name. An Abbey Road session took place recording demos of Hurry on Sundown, and others, after which Slattery left to be replaced by Hugh Lloyd Langton, who had known Brock from his days working in a music shop selling guitar strings to Brock, then a busker. 1970–1975, United Artists era, Pretty Things guitarist Dick Taylor was brought in to produce the 1970 debut album Hawkwind. Although it was not a commercial success, it did bring them to the attention of the UK underground scene, finding them playing free concerts, benefit gigs, and festivals. Playing free outside the Bath Festival, they encountered another Ladbroke Grove-based band, the Pink Fairies, who shared similar interests in music and recreational activities. A friendship developed which led to the two bands becoming running partners and performing as Pinkwind. Their use of drugs, however, led to the departure of Harrison, who did not imbibe, to be replaced briefly by Thomas Crimble. Crimble played on a few BBC sessions before leaving to help organise the Glastonbury Free Festival 1971. He sat in during the band's performance there. Lloyd Langton also quit, after a bad LSD trip at the Isle of Wight festival led to a nervous breakdown. Their follow-up album, 1971's X in Search of Space, brought greater commercial success, reaching number 18 on the UK album charts, and also saw the band's image and philosophy take shape, courtesy of graphic artist Barney Bubbles and underground press writer Robert Calvert, as depicted in the accompanying Hawk Log booklet, which would further be developed into the Space Ritual stage show. Science fiction author Michael Moorcock and dancer Stacia also started contributing to the band. Dick Mick had left the band, replaced by sound engineer Del Detmer, but chose to return for this album, giving the band two electronics players. Bass player Dave Anderson, who had been in the German band Amon da 1/4 L2, had also joined and played on the album but departed before its release because of personal tensions with some other members of the band. Anderson and Lloyd Langton then formed the short-lived band Amon Din. Meanwhile, Ollis quit, unhappy with the commercial direction the band were heading in. The addition of bassist Ian Lemmy Kilmister and drummer Simon King propelled the band to greater heights. One of the early gigs this band played was a benefit for the Greasy Truckers at the Roundhouse on February 13, 1972. A live album of the concert Greasy Truckers Party was released, and after re-recording the vocal, a single Silver Machine was also released, reaching number 3 in the UK charts. This generated sufficient funds for the subsequent album Dre Mi Fa Sol La Ti Do Space Ritual Tour. The show featured dancers Stacia and Miss Renee, mime artist Tony Carrera, and a light show by Liquid Len, and was recorded on the elaborate package Space Ritual. At the height of their success in 1973, the band released the single Urban Guerrilla, which coincided with an IRA bombing campaign in London, so the BBC refused to play it and the band's management reluctantly decided to withdraw it, fearing accusations of opportunism, despite the disc having already climbed to number 39 in the UK chart. Dick Mick departed during 1973 and Calvert ended his association with the band to concentrate on solo projects. Detmar also indicated that he was to leave the band, so Simon House was recruited as keyboardist and violinist, playing live shows, a North America tour, and recording the 1974 album Hall of the Mountain Grill. Detmar left after a European tour and emigrated to Canada, whilst Alan Powell deputized for an incapacitated King on that European tour, but remained, giving the band 2 drummers. At the beginning of 1975, the band recorded the album Warrior on the Edge of Time in collaboration with Michael Moorcock, loosely based on his Eternal Champion figure. However, during a North America tour in May, Lemmy was caught in possession of amphetamine crossing the border from the USA into Canada. The border police mistook the powder for cocaine and he was jailed, forcing the band to cancel some shows. Fed up with his erratic behavior, the band fired the bass player, replacing him with their long-standing friend and former Pink Fairies guitarist Paul Rudolph. Lemmy then teamed up with another Pink Fairies guitarist, Larry Wallace, to form Motor Paragraph Red, named after the last song he had written for Hawkwind. 1976–1978, Charisma era, Robert Calvert made a guest appearance with band for their headline set at the Reading Festival in August 1975, after which he chose to rejoin the band as a full-time vocalist and front-man. Stacia, on the other hand, chose to relinquish her dancing duties and settle down to family life. The band changed record company to Tony Stratton Smith's Charisma Records and, on Stratton Smith's suggestion, band management from Douglas Smith to Tony Howard. 1976's Astounding Sounds, Amazing Music is the first album of this era and highlights both Calvert's well-crafted lyrics written with stage performance in mind and a greater proficiency and scope in the music. But on the eve of recording the follow-up Back on the Street single, Turner was sacked for his erratic live playing and Powell was deemed surplus to requirements. After a tour to promote the single and during rehearsals for the next album, Rudolph was also sacked for allegedly trying to steer the band into a musical direction at odds with Calvert and Brock's vision. Adrian H. Shaw, who as bass player for Magic Muscle had supported Hawkwind on the Space Ritual tour, came in for the 1977 album Quark, Strangeness and Charm. The band continued to enjoy moderate commercial success, but Calvert's mental illness often caused problems. A manic phase saw the band abandon a European tour in France, while a depression phase during a 1978 North American tour convinced Brock to disband the group. In between these 2 tours, the band had recorded the album PXA5 in January 1978, but its release was delayed until 1979. 1978–1979, Sonic Assassins and Hawk Lords. On December 23, 1977 in Barnstaple, Brock and Calvert had performed a one-off gig with Devon band Arc as the Sonic Assassins, and looking for a new project in 1978, bassist Harvey Bainbridge and drummer Martin Griffin were recruited from this event. Steve Swindells was recruited as keyboard player. The band was named Hawk Lords and recording took place on a farm in Devon using a mobile studio, resulting in the album 25 Years On. King had originally been the drummer for the project but quit during recording sessions to return to London, while House, who had temporarily left the band to join a David Bowie tour, elected to remain with Bowie full-time, but nevertheless contributed violin to these sessions. At the end of the band's UK tour, Calvert, wanting King back in the band, fired Griffin, then promptly resigned himself, choosing to pursue a career in literature. Swindells left to record a solo album after an offer had been made to him by the record company ATCO. 1980s, Bronze, RCA and Flicknick eras. In late 1979, Hawkwind reformed with Brock, Bainbridge and King being joined by Hugh Lloyd Langton and Tim Blake, embarking upon a UK tour despite not having a record deal or any product to promote. Some shows were recorded and a deal was made with Bronze Records, resulting in the Live 79 album, quickly followed by the studio album Levitation. However, during the recording of Levitation, King quit and Ginger Baker was drafted in for the sessions, but he chose to stay with the band for the tour, during which Tim Blake left to be replaced by Keith Hale. In 1981, Baker and Hale left after their insistence that Bainbridge should be sacked was ignored, and Brock and Bainbridge elected to handle synthesizers and sequences themselves, with drummer Griffin from the Hawklords rejoining. 3 albums, which again saw Michael Moorsock contributing lyrics and vocals, were recorded for RCA Active, Sonic Attack, The Electronic Church of Hawkwind and Choose Your Masks. This band headlined the 1981 Glastonbury Festival and made an appearance at the 1982 Donington Monsters of Rock Festival, as well as continuing to play the summer solstice at Stonehenge Free Festival. In the early 1980s, Brock had started using drum machines for his home demos and became increasingly frustrated at the inability of drummers to keep perfect time, leading to a succession of drummers coming and going. First, Griffin was ousted and the band tried Simon King again, but unhappy with his playing at that time, he was rejected. Andy Anderson briefly joined while he was also playing for The Cure, and Robert Heaton also briefly filled the spot prior to the rise of New Model Army. Lloyd Langton group drummer John Clark did some recording sessions, and Rick Martinez joined the band for the start of the Earth Ritual tour but failed to end it, being replaced by Clive Deamer. Nick Turner had returned as a guest for the 1982 Choose Your Masks tour and was invited back permanently. Further tours ensued with Phil "Dead" Fred Reeves augmenting the lineup on keyboards and violin, but neither Turner nor Reeves would appear on the only recording of 1983/84, The Earth Ritual Preview, but there was a guest spot for Lemmy. The Earth Ritual tour was filmed for Hawkwind's first ever video release, Night of the Hawk. Alan Davey was a young fan of the band who had sent a tape of his playing to Brock, and Brock chose to oust Reeves, moving Bainbridge from bass to keyboards in order to accommodate Davey. This experimental lineup played at the Stonehenge Free Festival in 1984, which was filmed and released as Stonehenge 84. Subsequent personal and professional tensions between Brock and Turner led to the latter's expulsion at the beginning of 1985. Clive Deamer, who was deemed too professional for the band, was eventually replaced in 1985 by Danny Thompson Jr., a friend of bassist Alan Davey, and remained almost to the end of the decade. Hawkwind's association with Moorsock climaxed in their most ambitious project, The Chronicle of the Black Sword, based loosely around the Elric series of books and theatrically staged with Tony Crerar as the central character. Moorsock contributed lyrics, but only performed some spoken pieces on some live dates. The tour was recorded and issued as an album, Live Chronicles, and video, The Chronicle of the Black Sword. A headline appearance at the 1986 Reading Festival was followed by a UK tour to promote the Live Chronicles album, which was filmed and released as Chaos. In 1988 the band recorded the album The Xenon Codex with Guy Bide-Mead, but all was not well in the band and soon after, both Lloyd Langton and Thompson departed. Drummer Richard Chadwick, who joined in the summer of '88, had been playing in small alternative free festival bands, most notably Bath Smartpills, for a decade and had frequently crossed paths with Hawkwind and Brock. He was initially invited simply to play with the band, but eventually replaced stand-in drummer Mick Curtin to become the band's drummer to the present day. To fill in the gap of lead sound, lost when Lloyd Langton left, violinist Simon House was reinstated into the lineup in 1989, and, notably, Hawkwind embarked on their first US visit in 11 years, in which House did not partake. The successfully received full American tour was the first of several over the coming years, in an effort by the band to reintroduce themselves to the American market. 1990s, GWR, Essential and Emergency Broadcast System, Bridget Ashart, an associate of Chadwick's from the festival circuit, also joined to become the band's one and only frontwoman. This band produced 2 albums, 1990's Space Bandits and 1991's Palace Springs, and also filmed a 1-hour appearance for the Bedrock TV series. 1990 saw Hawkwind tour the USA again, the second installment in a series of American visits made at around this time in an effort to re-establish the Hawkwind brand in America. The original business plan was to hold 3 consecutive U.S. tours, annually, from 1989 to 1991, with the first losing money, the second breaking even, and the third turning a profit, ultimately bringing Hawkwind back into recognition across the Atlantic. Progress, however, was somewhat stunted, due to ex-member Nick Turner touring the United States with his own bands at the time, in which the shows were often marketed as Hawkwind. In 1991 Bainbridge, House and Ashart departed and the band continued as a 3-piece relying heavily on synthesizers and sequencers to create a wall of sound. The 1992 album Electric Teepee combined hard rock and light ambient pieces, while It Is the Business of the Future to Be Dangerous is almost devoid of the rock leanings. The Business Trip is a record of the previous album's tour, but rockier as would be expected from a live outing. The White Zone album was released under the alias Psychedelic Warriors to distance itself entirely from the rock expectancy of Hawkwind. A general criticism of techno music at the time was its facelessness and lack of personality, which the band were coming to feel also plagued them. Ron Tree had known the band on the festival circuit and offered his services as a frontman, and the band duly employed him for the album Alien 4 and its accompanying tour, which resulted in the album Love in Space and video Love in Space. In 1996, unhappy with the musical direction of the band, bassist Davey left, forming his own Middle Eastern-flavored hard rock group Bedouin and a Motor Paragraph Red's tribute act named Ace of Spades. His bass-playing role was reluctantly picked up by singer Tree, and the band were joined full-time by lead guitarist Jerry Richards for the albums Distant Horizons and In Your Area. Rasta chanter Captain Riz also joined the band for guest spots during live shows. 2000s, Hawkestra, Turner Brock Disputes, Bo Seprint and emergence of stable modern lineup. Hawkestra a reunion event featuring appearances from past and present members. Had originally been intended to coincide with the band's 30th anniversary and the release of the career-spanning Apocalypse 30-year anthology set, but logistical problems delayed it until October 21, 2000. It took place at the Brixton Academy with about 20 members taking part in a 3-plus-hour set which was filmed and recorded. Guests included Samantha Fox, who sang Master of the Universe. However, arguments and disputes over financial recompense and musical input resulted in the prospect of the event being restaged unlikely, and any album or DVD release being indefinitely shelved. The Hawkestra had set a template for Brock to assemble a core band of Tree, Brock, Richards, Davey, Chadwick, and for the use of former members as guests on live shows and studio recordings. The 2000 Christmas Astoria show was recorded with contributions from House, Blake, Riz, Moorsock, Jez Huggett and Keith Nervton and released as Your Ritual the following year. In 2001, Davey agreed to rejoin the band permanently, but only after the departure of Tree and Richards. Meanwhile, having rekindled relationships with old friends at the Hawkestra, Turner organized further Hawkestra gigs resulting in the formation of Xawkwind.com, a band consisting mainly of ex-Hawkwind members and playing old Hawkwind songs. An appearance at Guilfest in 2002 led to confusion as to whether this actually was Hawkwind, sufficiently irking Brock into taking legal action to prohibit Turner from trading under the name Hawkwind. Turner lost the case and the band now performs as Space Ritual. An appearance at the Canterbury Sound Festival in August 2001, resulting in another live album Canterbury Fair 2001, saw guest appearances from Lloyd Langton, House, Nervton with Arthur Brown on Silver Machine. The band organised the first of their own weekend festivals, named Hoagfest, in Devon in the summer of 2002. Brown joined the band in 2002 for a winter tour which featured some Kingdom Come songs and saw appearances from Blake and Lloyd Langton, the Newcastle show being released on DVD as Out of the Shadows and the London show on CD as Spaced Out in London. In 2005 the long-anticipated new album Take Me to Your Leader was released. Recorded by the core band of Brock Chadwick, contributors included new keyboardist Jason Stewart, Arthur Brown, tabloid writer and TV personality Matthew Wright, 1970s new wave singer Lean Lovitch, Simon House and Jez Huggett. This was followed in 2006 by the CD-DVD Take Me to Your Future. The band were the subject of an hour-long television documentary entitled Hawkwind, Do Not Panic that aired on BBC4 as part of the original series. It was broadcast on March 30, 2007 and repeated on August 10, 2007. Although Brock participated in its making, he did not appear in the program. It is alleged that he requested all footage of himself be removed after he was denied any artistic control over the documentary. In one of the documentary's opening narratives regarding Brock, it is stated that he declined to be interviewed for the program because of Nick Turner's involvement, indicating that the two men have still not been reconciled over the Hawkwind.com incident. December 2006 saw the official departure of Alan Davey, who left to perform and record with two new bands, Gunslinger and Thuna. He was replaced by Mr. Dibbs, a long-standing member of the road crew. The band performed at their annual Hawkfest festival and headlined the US festival Nearfest and played gigs in PA and NY. At the end of 2007, Tim Blake once again joined the band, filling the lead role playing keyboards and theremin. The band played 5 Christmas dates, the London show being released as an audio CD and video DVD under the title Knights of Space. In January 2008 the band reversed its anti-taping policy, long a sore point with many fans, announcing that it would allow audio recording and non-commercial distribution of such recordings, provided there was no competing official release. At the end of 2008, Tom Hench Records commenced the reissuing of Hawkwind's back catalogue from the years 1976 through to 1997 with the release of 2 triple CD anthologies Spirit of the Age and The Dream Goes On. On September 8, 2008 keyboard player Jason Stewart died due to a brain hemorrhage. In October 2008, Niall Hohn joined Hawkwind for their Winter 2008 tour playing guitar, along with returning synth theremin player Tim Blake. In this period, Hohn also occasionally played bass guitar alongside Mr. Dibbs and used laptops for live electronic improvisation. In 2009, the band began occasionally featuring John Sievink, from the Levellers as guest violinist at some shows. Later that year, Hawkwind embarked on a winter tour to celebrate the band's 40th anniversary, including 2 gigs on 28 and 29 August marking the anniversary of their first live performances. In 2010, Hawkwind held their annual Hawkfest at the site of the original Isle of Wight festival, marking the 40th anniversary of their appearance there. 2010s, Eastworld Era and Beyond. On June 21, 2010, Hawkwind released a studio album entitled Blood of the Earth. Since early 2011 Hohn has primarily played bass on stage, while Mr. Dibbs has moved to a more traditional lead singer role, while still playing bass, baritone guitar and cello on occasion. April 2012 saw the release of a new album, Onward, on the Plastic Heads Eastworld Records imprint. Keyboardist Dead Fred rejoined Hawkwind for the 2012 tour in support of Onward and has continued to perform with the band. In November 2012, a subset of the current touring lineup released an album under the name Hawkwind Light Orchestra, titled Stellar Variations, on the Esoteric Recording sub-label of Cherry Red Records. At the end of March 2013, Hawkwind held a 2-day festival, Hawkeaster, at Seaton Town Hall in Devon. The band chose the town hall in an effort to save the venue from closure. Hawkeaster 2013 included 2 performances of Hawkwind's 1975 album Warrior on the Edge of Time in its entirety to celebrate the album's 40th anniversary re-release. In February 2014, Hawkwind performed at the O2 Shepherd's Bush Empire featuring an appearance by Brian Blessed for the spoken word element of Sonic Attack. A studio recording single of this performance is due for release in September 2014. Influence and legacy. Hawkwind have been cited as an influence by artists such as Al Jurgensen of Ministry, Monster Magnet, The Sex Pistols, Henry Rollins of Black Flag, T.Y. Seagull, and Ozark Tentacles. Heavy metal hard rock musician Lemmy of the seminal band Motor Paragraph Red gained a lot from his tenure in Hawkwind. He has remarked, "I really found myself as an instrumentalist in Hawkwind. Before that I was just a guild player who was pretending to be good, when actually I was no good at all. In Hawkwind I became a good bass player." It was where I learned I was good at something. Current members: Dave Brock Euro vocals, guitar, keyboards, Tim Blake Euro keyboards, theremin, Richard Chadwick Euro drums, vocals, Mr. Dibbs Euro vocals, cello, baritone guitar, bass, Niall Hone Euro bass, guitar, vocals, keyboards, Dead Fred, keyboards, violin, vocals. Former members. Discography. Videography. 1984 Euro Night of the Hawks Euro 60 Minutes Concert, 1984 Euro Stonehenge Euro 60 Minutes Concert with Enid and Roy Harper, 1984 Euro Stonehenge, 60 Minutes Concert, 1985 Euro The Chronicle of the Black Sword Euro 60 Minutes Concert, 1986 Euro Bristol Custom Bike Show Euro 15 Minutes Concert with Voodoo Child, 1986 Euro Chaos, 60 Minutes Concert, 1989 Euro Trewergy Tree Fair Euro 90 Minutes Concert, 1990 Euro Nottingham. Euro 60 Minutes TV Concert, 1990 Euro Bournemouth Academy Euro 90 Minutes Concert, 1992 Euro Brixton Academy Euro 123 Minutes Concert, 1995 Euro Love in Space Euro 90 Minutes Concert, 2002 Euro Out of the Shadows Euro 90 Minutes Concert, 2008 Euro Nights of Space Euro 90 Minutes Concert, Remixes, 1993, Remixes, Spirit of the Age, Solstice Mixes 12 inches and CD single, 1996, Remixes, Future Reconstructions, Ritual of the Solstice 2. X12, and CD album, 1999, Remixes, Silver Machine, Infected by the Scourge of the Earth 12, and CD single, 2000, Remixes, The Hawkwind Remix Project CD album, book references, Buckley, Peter. The Rough Guide to Rock. London, Rough Guides. ISBN A1-85828-201-2. Other references. Further reading: there are 3 biographies of Hawkwind. Chris Tayeta Euro This is Hawkwind, Do Not Panic, Ian Abrahams Euro Sonic Assassins, Carol Clark Euro Saga of Hawkwind, external links, official band website, Stuff Errors Hawkwind page, Hawkwind Files Comprehensive Discography, Hawkeye on Hawkwind, Scott Heller's Review of the Hawkestra Concert, Hawkwind at the Windsor Free Festival, Hawkwind at the Stonehenge Free Festival, Hawkwind at the Oval 1972, Fime Freaks, Hawkwind X In Search of Space Original photos by Fime Freaks.